Welcome to Queens. Ford dealership where I service my car. Not very interesting, but just about 50,000 miles after that trip to Virginia yesterday. I guess I didn't talk about it that much, but while I'm waiting for the car, there's not much else to do. This is one of these things where going back to the city and coming back to get it is, by the time I get there, I'll probably just have to turn right around and come back. So I don't think I've been over to this part of Queens on a show before because it isn't that interesting, but you know, people who aren't from New York, this is still technically New York City. We're in the outer boroughs here. I guess the show has gone to each and every borough, right? I mean, we've been to Brooklyn. This is the car section of Queens, I guess. We have all these Acura, Honda. Why is that car dealerships are always around in the same part of town, wherever you are? See, in New York, we have these car elevators because space is at a premium, even in Queens, the king of Queens. We've been to Staten Island with that Max Pub. Brooklyn? I must have been to Brooklyn. I'm trying to think. We've been to Queens before at the surrogate court checking out Letitia James. Brooklyn, Maimonides Hospital. Went to Brooklyn. Remember I rode the bike to Brooklyn? That was a hell of a bike ride. Staten Island, the Bronx for Trump's rally. And now back to Queens to get the car fixed. When people think of New York City, that's Manhattan is really what most people are thinking about. And then Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and the Bronx are considered the outer boroughs. So there's not going to be too much interesting to see here, but I wanted to talk to everybody about what was going on in this trip yesterday to Virginia. It was, wow, look at this racing tire here. Should get those put on my car, race around. That's crazy. Probably skid out. But yeah, you have all these car places around here. I was in Virginia yesterday for a hearing in the matter of Nina, Miss Jankowicz, who I'm finally allowed to speak about. It's a complicated situation, and I mean, you know what? After tomorrow, I may not be allowed to speak about her again for another 2 years, so let's talk about it. Because the restraining order is not in effect right now, but they've submitted a motion to extend it for another 2 years. And I was quite disappointed. I thought the judge would decide yesterday what was going to happen, you know, in the hearing. She said no, she needs to review the information and decide. My argument was the thing has expired, so their motion to extend cannot extend something that has expired. We'll see. They're also saying, well, they want a new one. And then I said, don't they have to file a motion for a new one if they have a motion to extend? I don't know, it seems to me when I file things in court, they get very particular like that. You know, like the court doesn't just say, well, you wanted to extend, but we can't extend, so here's a new one. They would say, well, no, this is wrong, and you have to go back and change this little detail and that little detail. We'll see. I don't know what the hell is going on. Remember, I'm not a lawyer. People who are just watching right now, let's go over here. This will give people an idea of what Queens kind of looks like compared to Manhattan. These kind of houses really remind me of Queens. I guess these are row houses, I don't know. But here we got graffiti. It's not very nice, no offense to anybody from Queens. I don't really like Queens, and I mean, you know, you probably know in your town they don't put all the car dealerships in the nicest part of town, do they? But here's Queens. I guess it's all right. Yeah, they have different colored taxis too. I think you got to be a green taxi to be in Queens or Brooklyn, or I don't know how that works. But people are getting little details about New York City. It is still technically New York City to be in Queens, but it's not Manhattan. So yeah, basically what happened was that I haven't really been able to speak about for 2 years is, people might recall, and I've recently put it back on X. I might be back to calling X Twitter because we've got Trump versus Elon Musk back on. I don't know enough about the details of this bill to know if it's good or bad. Some people, including Charles, say it's got to pass because it's got key Trump stuff in it, and if it doesn't pass, then the Democrats will keep doing X, Y, and Z, and Trump will lose in the midterms. So I don't know, maybe there's politics stuff there that Elon Musk isn't an expert at. But if people go on to X, this is a pretty nice Queens house. If people go on to X and follow me at JG_CSTT, or if you're already following, there's a highlights tab on X that's very good. I try to put my favorite stuff in the highlights there, and this video about Nina is there. That is a video that I created. Here's some sneakers if anybody needs a pair. On May 16th, 2022. And that was a video where I did a bunch of research into Nina. She thinks I'm somehow obsessed with her. I really don't care about her at all on a personal level. I became interested in her when she appeared on TV telling everybody and the internet how she was the disinformation governance director, the director of the Disinformation Governance Board. When's the last time you saw TV antennas? Do those even still work? I thought those don't work when they switched to digital in 2000 something. Leave it up there. That's Queens though. Now what are these flags? Do people recognize this? Foreign flags flying? What does that mean? I really don't know anything about this neighborhood except that the Ford dealership was here. So I did this report on Nina and was looking at some websites that had also looked into her. There was one website that she had shut down somehow. It was still archived on archive.org. By the way, archive.org is not some kind of super secret thing. It's not illegal. It's still a public website. I remember they used to have these ads when I was a kid saying, don't pull the fire alarm, recklessly. It's got to be an emergency, which is obvious to anyone, but I don't think I've seen one of these in a real long time. Isn't there something super old school about this, like just public fire alarm? I guess they still work. Don't mess with that. This is Queens. I don't know, maybe people think it's nice, lower buildings close to Manhattan. For me, it's always been Brooklyn and Queens are sort of like the worst aspects of Long Island combined with the worst aspects of New York City, so pick one. And now New York City has gotten so much worse than it was 30 years ago, so I don't know what it's like around Queens. Got to imagine worse. But in that May 16th, 2022 exploration into Nina, there was a website there. I forget the name of the guy who created it, but he found a lot of interesting information about Nina. Public documents, I didn't somehow illegally obtain and disseminate her address, but apparently her home address was there in a website that I was scrolling through. She tries to position it as me maliciously spreading around her address and telling people to do something to her. I need to say, no one should do anything. No one should contact Nina. Definitely don't threaten her. Don't do anything to her. That's their number one favorite excuse, is to say, oh, this person is talking about me and now I'm getting death threats. Think of how many people say that. I've gotten death threats. I didn't sue anybody over the death threats. I had somebody come to my apartment, show the building, and say, this is where Jason lives. And George's brother, by the way, has sent around, he sent his email in which he refers to me as an effing Jew. He sends that to the lawyers in Goodman versus the City of New York. There's no constructive purpose for that. See, he tries to make it seem that there is, that, oh, he's just alerting lawyers to whatever. But that's actually harassment. He is a pernicious harasser in that he's trying to couch his harassment in pseudo litigation to make it seem like he's actually doing something that can get around harassment laws. And it does prompt the police to say, oh, well, you're in civil litigation with him, so you got to take that up civilly. In my case, you know, Nina, she got very upset that this video showed inadvertently. I didn't even know it was her home address. I was just like, who is this person? Who is her husband? This is sort of standard stuff that we do when we're looking into people. Mike Waltz's wife was working for Hillary Clinton. So when you make yourself a public figure, you can't then simultaneously say, oh, don't look at anything that I'm doing. You're injecting yourself into the government and making public policy. People have a right to know what your background is, what the hell you're doing exactly. You know, she was a Clinton Fulbright scholar. She was in Ukraine in 2014. There's a lot of stuff that happened in Ukraine in 2014, and I spoke about a lot of this in that video. She was making a blog, Sweating It or something like that, where she was saying, oh, I'm so delighted to be back in the country of my ancestors. She showed us this water mill in modern day Ukraine that used to be Poland. Charles made the commentary that nobody in the 1930s in Poland owned property other than members of the Nazi party. I don't know if that's correct or not. Charles told me that, but you know, Nina's there talking about how her family owned this water mill. I don't know what her history is, but she was in Ukraine on a Clinton Fulbright scholarship, learning to speak Ukrainian, working for all these foreign entities producing news. And you know, Andrei Telizhenko tells me it was propaganda, pro-war propaganda, Western propaganda, which was trying to sway what was happening with the government there. A lot of people think the United States shouldn't mess with other governments, focus more on here. Like, in other words, you look around, does this look like a paradise, the best country in the world, or does it look like an economically depressed, kind of crappy area? I don't see these streets teeming with business. Why are all these things closed here? I mean, it's kind of, we're here in the middle of the day. Shouldn't these businesses be open? Shouldn't there be people walking around? We're not in the middle of Nebraska. This is New York City. Where the hell is everybody? I don't know. And even Manhattan is a wreck. Graffiti everywhere. Why are we spending billions of dollars blowing up Ukraine when the money could be spent fixing up New York and other cities in the United States? So, you know, if Nina wants to sit in her house and tend to her family and mind her own damn business, she's got a strong argument for wanting strict privacy. And certainly I would never know about her or look into her or care what she's doing. It's when she goes on the internet and television talking about how she thinks verified users on Twitter, which, remember, at that time, the process for getting verified was very opaque, unclear how you could do it. Now, you can get verified by providing a credit card and certain information about yourself. That makes sense to me. I think it's still not an adequate process because it turns out other people can pay for your verification, so that means somebody else's credit card could verify you. How the hell does that work? That's not exactly what Elon Musk told us would be happening. I mean, I don't know. Does that look like the greatest country in the world? It doesn't look like a shanty town in Haiti, but it's not like everybody's living in a castle here. And how much does it cost to live in these homes? And how much are these people earning? And how much tax are they paying? How many of these things are owned by Letitia James through crooked schemes to take people's deeds and mortgages or whatever the hell she was up to? I don't know. This looks a lot to me like a Peter Stuyvesant Village type of thing. But, so Nina wants to be able to edit people's tweets, decide what is information and what is disinformation, get you removed from the internet if you say controversial things about COVID-19 or the war in Ukraine or the election in the United States of America. It's really unprecedented. Well, it's not unprecedented. Woodrow Wilson had, what was it, the Public Information Bureau? What was Woodrow Wilson's thing? Let's look that up for a second, because this is interesting. Woodrow Wilson, Public Information Committee on Public Information, I think. Woodrow Wilson created the Committee on Public Information, also known as the Creel Committee. So Nina is sort of the modern day Creel, because the guy who was doing it was somebody Creel. What was his name? George Creel was the chairman of this. And so the point of it was an independent agency of the government under the Wilson administration created to influence public opinion to support the U.S. in World War I, in particular the U.S. home front. So what does that sound like? Nina is over there in Ukraine and creating information to get people to support the war in Ukraine. It's like, you know, propaganda advertising for the government. So according to this, in just over 26 months, from April 14th, 1917 to June 30th, 1919, the Creel Committee used every medium available to create enthusiasm for the war effort and to enlist public support against the foreign and perceived domestic attempts to stop America's participation in the war. It's a notable example of propaganda in the United States. Now, Nina was working for or a fellow at, somehow involved with the Wilson Institute. Is that what it is? The Wilson Center? It's a nonprofit think tank. Wilson Center, let's look that up. Yeah, the wilsoncenter.org. They love Ukraine there. Let's see, can I get this onto the screen? Let me show everybody this stuff here. We've spoken about this before, but it's definitely worth mentioning again, because this is not a coincidence. This is not, you know, random stuff. This is important. And when I wanted to talk about it, a lot of interesting things happened that I want to tell everybody about right now. So let's see if this will work. I think it will. There we go. Yeah. So here's the Wilson Center, right? And let's just go back and look at that Committee on Public Information, the CPI, right? Here's the Committee on Public Information. So I guess it was easier to control public information back in the day because all you really had was the newspaper, and if you put stuff in the news, people would say, "Oh, you know, I guess that's true." And also, what did you have in 1917? Well, didn't we have the Spanish flu shortly after that? Here's the Wilson Center. Look, what are they talking about? Ukraine. USMCA, what is that? NAFTA. So see, they're just trying to influence people's opinions on everything. Why should this be a nonprofit thing? I mean, why do they get to decide what public opinion is? And when they have Nina going into the Disinformation Governance Board, well, if I say, hey, the Ukraine war was started by Joe Biden, and they say, no, it's not, that's disinformation, get Jason off the internet. That is what I allege she was essentially doing. She was a minister of propaganda spewing lies. And since her departure from the Disinformation Governance Board, which I think was shut down as a result of the revelations in that video, she says she resigned. Why would she resign? She was super upset that it was like her favorite, you know, her dream job, and she just suddenly resigned when I said, hey, shouldn't this chick be registered with the with FARA as a foreign agent of a foreign government? The reason I said that, and she shakes her head in court like this is a ridiculous conspiracy theory. They've said that about a lot of the things that I've said. They just make these broad generalizations that I'm talking about conspiracy theories, but everything that I've said about her is supported by public domain facts. It's possible I've said something that's incorrect, but she hasn't said that. She hasn't refuted the evidence and facts that I've presented by counteracting with stronger evidence and stronger facts. She just shakes her head and makes stupid faces and says it's a conspiracy theory. But essentially what I said was, hey, wait a minute. While she's working for the Department of Homeland Security Disinformation Governance Board, she's receiving thousands of dollars to a private for-profit company that she appears to control called Sophia's Strategies. All these things have been removed from the internet. So again, I think it's important for people to go on to X. I've recently posted it there at JG_CSTT. Maybe this person gets serviced at the Ford dealership too. And you go to the highlights tab, you can see this video all about Nina and how she was, according to the evidence that I saw, receiving thousands of dollars from British, Canadian, and Italian nonprofits into her for-profit company, Sophia's Strategies. And I also got a photograph off of that website that she pretty stupidly posted there herself, if she didn't want me to see this or learn this. But that photograph contained metadata about where and when it was taken and the name of the photographer. It was taken in Ukraine, and I spoke to the photographer who confirmed that it was inside Z Komanda, Zelensky's campaign headquarters. And she was in there on election night. She, I forgot to finish my thoughts about her Sweating It blog. So I was looking at the archive.org history of snapshots of that blog, and it appeared to have very frequent snapshots, almost daily, as I recall. People can go back and look at it, verify. I'm just going by memory now, but there was a big hole in the snapshot history from February to March. And that coincides with when the Euromaidan coup took place in Ukraine, in Kiev, where, rioters, insurrectionists, threw firebombs and burned a government building, resulting in something like 200 deaths of government employees, remarkably similar to what was staged on January 6th. And remember, people even found photographs of Ukrainian operatives in the crowd. They identified them by name. I don't remember these names off the top of my head, but Yuri something or other. These Ukrainian maniacs who were there in the crowd on January 6th, inciting the riot. So remember, there was like millions of peaceful Trump supporters and just a few mad rioters. And by the way, if we had a few hundred mad rioters, they could have been provoked by a few dozen. And we know that there were crazy Ukrainians in the crowd. I suspect they were attempting to recreate exactly what happened in 2014, the Euromaidan insurrection, which resulted in the overthrow of the government, a legitimate coup d'etat. Many people feel was sponsored by the US State Department. That feeling comes from recordings of Victoria Nuland saying F the EU, her deciding who the president of Ukraine was going to be. Victoria Nuland is a psychopath, in my opinion, and Nina, in many ways, seems to behave in the same way as Victoria Nuland. Now, I'm not a mental health professional. I can't diagnose Nina as a psychopath. So when I say she's a psychopath, it's an obvious statement of opinion, hyperbolic criticism. We seem to have a problem in this country with an understanding of the First Amendment. You see, morons like Zoran Mandami think it's his First Amendment right to terrorize customers and employees of Tesla in Soho, Manhattan, to make it so that they have to close down their business. I disagree. I think that's an actual form of attack on a business, and if you did that a sufficient number of times, the business would go out of business. It's sort of what they did to me, right? Keep attacking my social media channels, which I rely on to do business, shutting them down, and then I can't do business. Odyssey can no longer process credit cards. Who caused that? Was George's brother agitating the bank that, or did Nina or someone like her agitate the banks to say, hey, Odyssey, you need to implement these content moderation policies? That's what they told me happened, that they did not want to implement content moderation policies that the banks were forcing them to implement, so they lost their ability to process credit cards. People in a couple days will not be able to watch sponsor exclusive videos on Odyssey unless you get this cryptocurrency that some people have told me they don't want to get, and I understand that. I would encourage Odyssey viewers who still want to get the sponsor exclusive content to head over to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You can also subscribe on X. Follow me there and become a subscriber, and you'll get the sponsor exclusive content and support the show. But this has been the focus of the attacks from George's mentally ill brother. Again, I'm not a mental health professional. It's my opinion based on his public behavior that he's mentally ill. But he's very aligned with Nina. He has sent her messages. She claims she doesn't know who he is, but she's gotten Twitter messages from him. Her lawyers have received emails directly from him. She's using screen captures and images that look essentially exactly like the same screen captures he's making on the same exact day she's submitting them as evidence in court. It's all very coincidental. Yesterday in court, she presented literally a spreadsheet of dozens of videos that I've made. She's somehow able to locate every single video in which I've mentioned Ivan Raiklin's attempt to violate a court order. People have heard me speaking about this in a kind of an obtuse, roundabout way. But let's talk about that. Ivan Raiklin, a lot of Teslas around here. Ivan Raiklin is a guy who I met. Look at this Saturn. This thing is pretty banged up. I don't know if that sunscreen is helping it too much, but you got, what is going on with this vehicle? Tape over the headlights doesn't seem to be in very good health. Wow, what a disaster. Ivan Raiklin is a guy, now what is this? Is this a Camaro? It's pretty banged up too. Ivan Raiklin is a guy who I met in Congress. Is it a Chevelle? What is that? People will know. I met him in Congress, actually, at the Twitter files hearing. Remember that? See, this ties in with this whole Trump versus Elon Musk. A lot of people never trusted Elon Musk. A lot of people always trusted Elon Musk. I sort of thought Elon Musk was a great and interesting, innovative business leader, technologist, and all-around interesting guy. But then, when I thought I was trying to help, not him, but everyone, by alerting him that the FBI was in control of Twitter, I got attacked. Remember that? That was November 1st, 2022, about 5 weeks before the release of the Twitter files. I was trying to alert Elon Musk to the Twitter coup. Well, what's the difference between the Twitter coup and the Twitter files? The Twitter files is all this reporting that was done by Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger and others, Barry Weiss, where Elon Musk gave them some kind of exclusive access to curated release of internal documents from Twitter. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like a magic trick, right? He's like, you can see this and you can see it in this way. But he's not releasing everything. He didn't jump on the information that I provided, which seems to prove that Barack Obama and Adam Sharp and Valerie Caproni were the ones who were behind the installation of the FBI into Twitter. Remember, Valerie Caproni was the FBI General Counsel from 2003 to 2011. Adam Sharp was the Twitter U.S. government liaison and various other things from 2010 to 2016. And it was right around 2010, I believe, that the U.S. government was inserted into and began spying on people through Twitter. So you would think if Elon Musk was interested in freedom of speech and, suppressing government overreach, that this would be a shocking revelation that he would want to know about, and that when I went there on November 1st to tell him about this at a time when nobody knew anything about it at all, he'd say, wow, that's interesting. But he didn't do that. He avoided, first of all, I was attacked by people who seemed to be employed by Twitter. They seemed like a security team. They were there 2 days in a row. They told me to leave as soon as they saw me there with a camera, so why do they care that I'm there? They attacked me when I came back the next day to give this information to Elon Musk, even though his bodyguard said, yeah, sure, you can wait here sitting on a fire hydrant for Elon Musk. Why is every single business around here closed? What the hell is going on? What day is today? It's Tuesday. What is going on? It's weird. But it's like COVID almost. This dude on the mini motorcycle, super strange. But you would think Elon Musk would have been interested in that. Somebody interested in, rooting out the FBI from Twitter would be interested in that. But it seems like what Elon Musk did was a limited hangout to reset Twitter as a spying platform. And, Nina left Twitter. She terminated her Twitter account because it's now, a right-wing hellscape. But isn't that an interesting way to corral everyone they want to monitor back onto one platform and make people think it's great and that Elon Musk is this trusted savior of Twitter who everybody should revere, and we should change the laws so that people from South Africa can become president of the United States, and he can start a new political party and argue with Trump and say that Trump, here's a Hellcat, say that Trump was on, maybe they just put the Hellcat sticker on there. I think that looks more like it. Not a Hellcat. They don't make that car in a Hellcat variation, but you can get the sticker. I just don't know. I mean, I think that Elon Musk is involved in a lot of media manipulation, it seems. And Garden State, brickface, and stucco. People from New York in my age group will know what I'm talking about. But it's very weird. Elon Musk avoided service for 6 months in Goodman versus the city of New York, where I sued Twitter and Elon Musk and the city of New York, various NYPD officers who issued me a facially defective disorderly conduct summons after I called the police for getting choked. And there were red finger marks on my neck. They did not look at that when I told them I had been attacked and choked. They didn't conduct a very thorough investigation at all. They looked at 30 seconds or less of a 39-minute video containing video evidence of the incident, and they decided, well, Jason, you engaged in a public disturbance. I was just sitting there and I got attacked. I think, particularly based on evidence that's come out since then about the NYPD and former police commissioner Ed Caban shaking down local businesses to hire private security teams. Those allegations exist in 2 or 3 independent civil lawsuits where people have sworn under penalty of perjury that this happened. These are credible allegations, and I see evidence that that's what was happening at Twitter. Don't people think that's plausible? Ooh, that's a nice kind of out of the ordinary house. Is that a regular private house? It looks like some kind of maybe doctor's office or something. See the door there? It says new, what does it say? Oh, it's a church. I can't really read that sign from here. Can people see that? New apostle, maybe? Anyway, yeah, nicer than a house. But, yeah, I think that the security team was hired by Elon Musk. I mean, his bodyguards had concealed carry guns. You can't do that in New York City. And the police didn't show up and say, hey, who are you? What's up with this concealed carry gun? And arrest Elon Musk's bodyguard. They politely asked him, did you see anything? He said no. Then he left immediately with evidence, video evidence of what was going on. I could see the screen on inside the car, and that Tesla has Sentry video recording mode around the car when stuff happens. And the cops wrote a ticket saying an individual known to the department, so they knew the kid who strangled me, an individual known to the department told the undersigned, the drunk, dumb police officer writing the ticket, that the defendant, me, created a public disturbance, but the only other guy in public who they interviewed said he didn't see or hear anything. So that contradicts their claim that there was any kind of public disturbance, and it just really seems like the police, this private security team, Elon Musk's bodyguard, Elon Musk himself, and Twitter refusing to answer in court and being protected by the despicable judge Jessica G.L. Clark, who's allowed George's brother to enter these ridiculous letters calling me an effing Jew, which he's started sending around again. The judge just allows him to do that kind of disruptive conduct for no good purpose without admonishing him to stay out of the case. Can you imagine that? I mean, look, I don't care that George's brother says those kind of things, but it's just, I make a point of it because it's just so obviously inappropriate and serves no purpose whatsoever, particularly coming from someone not in the case. In other words, if that was a statement made during the incident and it was part of the evidence, there could be a need. What is that? Mount Sinai doctors. There could be some kind of need for that sort of language to come into the case, but there wasn't here. And you would think that when someone injects that kind of inflammatory, completely useless statement into court proceedings, particularly when that somebody is not involved in the case, and particularly when I raise it with the judge and say, hey, this guy has been stalking and harassing me for 8.5 years, can you please tell him to stay out of the case and leave me alone? The judge refused twice, 2 requests. So that case is up on appeal, Goodman versus the City of New York, and something wonderful happened yesterday. I didn't know that I could get this, but there is something called a certificate of disposition. That is a document that is stored with the New York City Criminal Court, and it's kind of like a sealed document, because what happened when I went to court for that disorderly conduct ticket is the judge looked at the ticket, looked at me, he said, "What did you do?" And I opened my mouth to say, and before I could say anything, the judge just scribbled out the whole ticket and he said, "This is defective, this is dismissed, you can go home." And that was it. The case ended without me saying anything because the judge looked at it and realized there was no legitimate charge there. The cops had no probable cause and no reason to give me this ticket. When I speak to Sal Greco and other retired NYPD officers about it, they're confused by it because it doesn't make any damn sense. Because in my opinion, it was just given to me to shut down the situation and get me to go away. So I had entered testimony in the case saying, you know, this thing was dismissed in my favor and it's a non-issue. George's brother was hammering on it, sending it to everybody. He loves that document. False documents created under false pretenses. He loves that kind of crap. But he was sending that around along with telling everybody that I'm an effing Jew. And it was a big part of the magistrate's report and recommendation, which dismissed my case, to say that the police had probable cause to give me this ticket. I'm saying no, they didn't have probable cause. They did it to protect the identity of these unknown people who attacked me. And really the main reason for the lawsuit is I want to know who the hell those people are. If Elon Musk hired them and paid them and they attacked me, then the richest man in the world needs to compensate me for that attack. You're not allowed to just pay people to attack people for no reason. I was sitting there quietly waiting to give the guy a document that was supposed to be helpful, and I was attacked. So at first I wasn't trying to get money. I just wanted to say, hey, I presume you don't know about this and other people are trying to get something over on you. Because remember, Jim Baker was still the attorney. He was the deputy general counsel of Twitter at the time, and Jim Baker, as people might recall, was the FBI general counsel until he got drummed out in 2017, something to do with the John Durham investigation. We really don't know what. And who else was the FBI general counsel? Well, right before Baker, it was Andrew Weissman, another guy who's very involved in trying to get rid of Trump. And right before Weissman, it was Valerie Caproni. So it's my opinion, based on that public domain evidence, that the FBI general counsel is a rogue office populated by criminals who regularly break the law, violate people's rights, abuse the FBI, use it as a weapon. You know, we all think, hey, the FBI is here to help us and enforce the law. No, it seems to be a strong-arm bunch of thugs. And in the same way we think, hey, Twitter is here, X is here to help us, and Elon Musk is a nice guy. Maybe no. Maybe no. I mean, Trump says Elon Musk has known all about this thing for a long time. I really don't trust Elon Musk. I mean, I like Tesla cars. I like the satellite company. I like the idea of launching rockets, but is it plausible that one guy could run all that stuff? I mean, everybody tells us, oh, he's a historic super genius. That's possible, I guess. But could he just be another one of these front men? One of these, people that they install? A lot of people think that's what happened with Bill Gates. Some kind of cultivated, curated stooge that just gets stuck in there so that some secretly government-run thing like Microsoft can monopolize an important industry, the most important industry through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. I don't know. We see other characters like that. Mark Zuckerberg, Palmer Luckey, they're closely related. Palmer Luckey freaks out when I talk about drones in Butler, PA. And what did we just find out today? The amazing Ken Silva, JD_cashless on X, he succeeded in getting FOIA documents from the FAA. I had FOIA'd the FAA and they told me, maybe I asked for the wrong thing. He got no-fly documentation. I guess I was asking for, I have to go back and look at what I was asking for, but they told me they had nothing to send me. He got this document that said there was a restriction, a no-fly zone, that said VIP UAS only. So to me, that means very important people could fly unmanned aerial systems. So was that Anduril? The Secret Service contracting to someone who was flying Anduril technology? I don't know, but it's very interesting. And certainly more evidence that UAS they were flying. I don't think Thomas Crooks got that VIP UAS certification from the FAA. I don't think I've ever even heard of that before. I know I haven't. It's quite strange. So, is Palmer Luckey another one of these guys? He boasts about how he's had 2 unicorn companies before he was 30. It's possible someone could do that, but he seems like a pretty unstable fucking asshole who is unable to control his temper on Twitter and likes to respond to everything I tweet like he's a jilted ex-girlfriend or something weird. You'd think somebody with billions of dollars wouldn't care what I have to say, my pipsqueak Twitter X account. Why would he care? Unless it represents a substantial threat to whatever it is that he's doing, a threat to expose it. Just like Nina. She wanted to shut down my videos, shut down my YouTube channel. She succeeded in shutting down the YouTube channel, the Twitter account, shutting me up. So we were in court yesterday and, she did the lowest of the low. When I published that report about her being in Ukraine and getting money from foreign governments, where I said, hey, shouldn't this person be registered under the Foreign Agent Registration Act if she's getting all this money from foreign nonprofits funded by foreign governments while she's working for the Department of Homeland Security? Shouldn't that person be registered somehow? She didn't respond with a tweet saying, no, I don't need to register because you don't know anything about the law, Jason. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. Shut up and go away. She didn't do that. The Twitter account got shut down. Now, she swears she didn't do that, but didn't somebody working on her behalf do that? Maybe it was Ben Wittes. Maybe it was George's asshole, mentally ill, wife-swapping, paperclip Nazi brother. But it seems to be someone working in her interest who did that. She says it wasn't her. She swears in court it wasn't her. I see evidence that she lies in court with impunity and that she's a vicious liar. That's what I see. Other people might look at the same evidence and come to a different conclusion. I'm making statements of pure opinion based on public domain evidence. This looks new and Chinese. Brand new condo. Residential if you're Chinese. Call Wen Kong Hu. Winnie. Can I have a condo in Queens, please? Or in China? Try the breakfast. Yeah, so they wanted to shut me down, Ministry of Information, Disinformation, whatever the hell it is. Where am I going here? Walk to Long Island or something. I have no idea. Really have no idea. I'm just strolling around Queens, killing time here, sharing all this information with everyone. They don't want me to be able to share this with you. And listen, they've made significant progress. It's very difficult for me to pay my bills and maintain the show and do all that sort of stuff. If you enjoy this information and you want independent journalism to survive and these types of tenacious investigations into troubling questions to continue, then please become a sponsor of the show. Get onto subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You can sponsor the show and access sponsor exclusive content. You can go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, or you can sponsor on X at JG_CSTT. It's so disappointing that they were able to succeed in taking out Odyssey, but do you see how pernicious they are? Odyssey was an excellent platform that developed their own technology, hosted their own videos, they were processing payments, they were able to do it for less money than the other technologies. That's what allowed me to offer people more economical subscriptions on Odyssey. I can't do that anymore. The minimum now is $5 a month. And even that, I haven't raised that price at all. It's becoming harder and harder to make things work at that price level. So, you know, they're a large group of people and they've been fighting me for 8 years. But yesterday was somewhat of a win in that the judge in Virginia, this is the chief judge of the Arlington Circuit Court, Judge Judith Wheat. She could have said, oh, screw you, Jason, you lose. She didn't say that. And as a matter of fact, I would say throughout this process, towards the end, the judge was showing signs of being reasonable. You know, she said she needs time to decide. She wants to review the statute and review all the evidence and information, and asked if I could be back in town next week. And I told her I would rather decide the thing today. All this driving around, putting mileage on my car, needing to take it for service, which by the way is hundreds of dollars, gasoline, hotels, all that. So the judge was very reasonable. She said, well, you can attend telephonically. So there's going to be another final, I guess, hearing to decide, and that's coming up. So we'll know the final decision. But during this period right now, I'm allowed to talk about Nina because her restraining order has lapsed. Now, it was very upsetting how they obtained this restraining order. I think it would be foolish at this point for me to repeat what it was that I said, which I think is legitimate First Amendment criticism. Nina has introduced certain facts and statements about members of her family into the public domain by talking about them and showing pictures of them and things like that. I made a criticism which was inarguably sharp, possibly offensive to many people, but it wasn't a true threat. In Virginia, there's a statute that defines true threats. Let's look it up and read it exactly, because it's important. And I just don't think the judge has judicial discretion to decide what a true threat is if it is statutorily defined. Again, I'm not an attorney. I could be wrong. The judge is. So the Virginia statute for true threats, a true threat, well, here's the First Amendment encyclopedia. Let's look at this. In Virginia, a true threat as it relates to free speech is a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence against a particular individual or group. It's a recognized exception to the First Amendment's protected free speech. Essentially, it's not protected speech because it poses a direct threat of harm. So it's a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence, like, you know, holding up a sign that says burn a Tesla, and then we see lots of people who are actually doing that, burning Teslas, and they're also holding it up outside the Tesla place, which is expressing a threat to a group of people which are Tesla customers. See, that seems like a true threat and not protected First Amendment speech, as Zoran Mandami thinks it is, when I said that a particular someone was, I don't even want to say it again because they'll say, oh, he's doing it again, he's threatening again. But I did not, no one should do any harm to anyone, okay? But if I criticize someone, even with foul language, it's not a true threat. It is not a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence against a particular individual or group. So I really do believe this judge violated my First Amendment rights. I expressed that in court yesterday, and even though the judge said, well, you know, you should have filed an appeal, it's like, what kind of asshole comment is that? I did file an appeal. My rights were abused through that appeal process. The judge is there supposed to serve justice, not say, oh, we violated your rights 2 years ago, we can't talk about that anymore. That was really quite ridiculous. But again, I think this judge is realizing that there are questions about how this process has gone on, and I'm certainly not going to allow my rights to be violated again and have that appeal process go south again. These community gardens I like, but they always look quite dilapidated for the best country in the world. I mean, this looks like maybe a prison garden or something. Public food scrap drop-off site. Oh my God. Okay, so I guess they're composting here or something. Big messes are made if an animal rips it open. Don't leave food scraps here. Wait a minute. So the Department of Sanitation wants you to leave food scraps here. Oh, if it's not Saturday morning. Well, that's small writing. I don't know what's going on here. But the point is, there are clearly a lot of questions. This is not an open and shut case. And I now have a good, I didn't know about that true threats. I should have said that 2 years ago in the court. But the judge reiterated yesterday, she says, oh, you crossed a line with what you said. I disagree. The judge can't decide that, oh, that's so offensive that it's not protected by the First Amendment. It needs to be a serious expression of an intent to do harm. Me saying this or that person is so despicable that they are a demon spawn is not a true threat. I'm not saying someone should do something to that person. It's just an offensive rebuke of someone who's been introduced into the public domain by someone who I'm criticizing. I'm allowed to say that. No one is bringing, why didn't Elon Musk bring Zoran Mondami into court and say, hey, you are someone who people listen to and follow, and you are supporting these true threats. Let's identify the people who are holding up this sign that said, burn a Tesla, that shut down my business. Why doesn't Tesla Inc. sue those people? What was it? Planet Profit? What was it? Planet Before Profit? Let's look that up too, so that I make sure I'm giving everybody the right name of the thing. It was called, what was it called? Gotta find that. It was like Pop 4 or something like that on Twitter, on X. Planet Over Profit, Pop 4 Climate. Okay, so we saw those t-shirts there. They were talking with Zoran Mondami. People were holding up signs that say, burn a Tesla. Why doesn't Elon Musk or Tesla sue that organization, bring Zoran Mondami into court and say, hey, this is not First Amendment protected speech. You're making a serious threat. We see that people followed up on those threats. You're a public figure. You've got a huge platform, hundreds of thousands of people following you on X. Why does he allow the guy to continue on X? I mean, I guess he's a mayor candidate, but this is an angle that's a pretty messed up 300Z X. This is an angle that somebody who wants to investigate Zoran Mondami and not have New York City fall to communism could explore, but instead we've got Nina spending untold thousands. She's trying to recover $9,000 and some odd dollars in legal fees from me when her lawyers haven't properly served me. Obviously, were trying to avoid serving me. They were operating in bad faith, in my opinion. They waited until I was in Florida. People saw I was in Florida. This was amazing too. So Nina had literally a spreadsheet of videos with something like 36 examples of, to the minute of where I was talking about Ivan Raiklin and Ivan Raiklin talking about her. She pulled that out of 2 years worth of videos. But just 12 days before her lawyers attempted to serve me, in this matter, she didn't see a video called Fort Lauderdale Air Show with Sal Greco, clearly showing me in Florida. And she didn't realize that I was talking about being in Florida. Charles mentioned it a bunch of times, which I didn't really like. But it was obvious to anybody who was monitoring the show that I was in Florida. And she says, oh, she didn't know that. I think this woman brazenly lies in court. That's what I think. That hasn't been proven yet. That will be decided at the next hearing, because I've got a motion before the court to hold her in contempt for submitting false statements under, sworn whatever, under penalty of perjury. That's a felony in Virginia. You can't just go into court and lie to get somebody in trouble, but it looks to me like that's what she does all the damn time. It's outrageous. So anyway, that's basically all I wanted to say. I don't know when the car is going to be ready, but that's what I wanted to tell everybody about. And there's more to come, We'll see. Man, my friend had this car in high school. He used to drive around. What a junk box. I can't believe that's still driving. This is like a 1980 Chevy Celebrity. Unbelievable. Oh, it's got the Pro Guard. Good, no one will steal it. Let's see, you can see the year. 1988. All right, I guess they didn't change it too much. Man, I think he had a 1982 or something like that. Terrible car, terrible. I can't believe that still drives. Well, I mean, hey, maybe it's not so bad after all. You keep it on the road for almost 40 years. Unbelievable. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Nina. Oh yeah, so the Second Circuit, what I wanted to say about Goodman versus the City of New York, I was able to obtain this certificate of disposition, which is essentially a secret document. It's a sealed case because the court determined that the police had no probable cause to give me this ticket. It was facially insufficient. It's a defective instrument. So rather than smear me publicly with it, the court puts it under seal. And the only people who are allowed to access it are like the court and the cops and me. And I went to get it because I provided evidence. You can't introduce new evidence in an appeal. And again, I'm not a lawyer. None of this is legal advice. I'm just sharing my general understanding of things with people from the standpoint of a layperson. You can't introduce new evidence in an appeal. It's all about the evidence already in the record from your district court case. But there are certain exceptions, as there normally are to most things in the law. And in this case, the exception was this evidence actually was spoken about in the district court case. And, I'm pro se. I didn't know that something called a certificate of disposition existed. But the court knew. And when I started talking about the fact that the case had been disposed in my favor, they should have sought this certificate rather than just saying, well, no, they had probable cause. They should have sought out this certificate to see if what I was saying was correct and supported by court admissible evidence. They didn't do that. So because of that, I was able to supplement the record of the appeal and introduce this evidence. And I think it might be the first motion I've entered in the Second Circuit that was granted. I had a motion granted in the appellate court yesterday. So that evidence is now part of the appeal, and Elon Musk and Twitter and Adam Sharp and all these other fucking assholes that are getting sued in that case have to now come and respond to my appellant brief, which is saying that the court there is also abusing my rights, protecting these unknown assailants, and the case needs to be reopened and remanded to the district court for further adjudication. We'll see if that happens. That hasn't happened yet. But this was better than them denying the motion and saying, no, you can't introduce this evidence. So that's at least moving in the right direction. The other excellent thing that happened yesterday is that George's mentally ill fucking asshole, wife-swapping, paperclip Nazi brother, a motion to strike his idiotic brief in Swigert v. Goodman, that was sent to the appellate review panel to decide on the merits if they're going to dismiss his appeal. He's insane, in my opinion. he entered a whole ridiculous, I got to figure out a way to share this with everybody. I got to get back to doing counter lawfare episodes. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that today. Got to deal with this business with the car and a bunch of other stuff. But anyway, that's what's happening in the world of counter lawfare. We'll see what happens with Nina. She's trying to get me found in contempt of court so she can put me in jail. Strangely, that's the same thing that Ivan Raiklin was doing. And somebody was asking me, they're like, Jason, why are they coming so hard after you? What about other people who are against the system, like Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters and Ben Shapiro? And I was like, well, I don't know if this person really has a good understanding of what being against the system is about, but I thought about that. And, you know, even to the extent that those people speak out against leftists or whatever kind of policy people think they're speaking out against, they aren't going to the same level of detail that I am, and they aren't attacking the lawfare apparatus. This is what I really need to wrap my head around. See, just by chance, when this all started, remember George Webb organized that interview with Charles. And at the very first interview, Charles was telling us about Peter Smith. He got that call from Shane Harris. And, you know, that became the focus of the conversation, in that Shane Harris was asking about Peter Smith. And Peter Smith, as people will recall, was trying to convey these allegedly stolen, hacked emails from Hillary Clinton to Charles. And Charles said, no, I don't want stolen, hacked anything. I'm just relying on public domain evidence. And that was very smart of Charles, because when the FBI came to interview him at the Roosevelt Hotel, curious, right? Why the same hotel that the migrants all live at? But when the FBI came to interview Charles, he said, emails? What emails? I don't have the emails. Peter Smith never gave me the emails, and the FBI was not able to jam him up as a result of that. But I began investigating Peter Smith, and we know that this is exactly what Ben Wittes was emailing to James Comey on December 28th, 2016, the very same day that Adam Sharp announced his resignation from Twitter. Weird, coincidental. Yesterday, Nina said in court that she doesn't know Ben Wittes, has never met Ben Wittes. It's interesting that he's on the board of directors of the American Sunlight Project, her nonprofit, which she told Congress was a 501c4. She'll say, no, I didn't tell Congress that, but she did make a material misrepresentation. She might have fallen short of actually saying, I run a 501c4, but she said something to the effect of, because she's being so viciously stalked and harassed, she started a nonprofit that doesn't have to disclose its donor information like other 501c4s. So she certainly led Congress and the public to believe that it's a 501c4, but from the public domain evidence that I've seen, the thing is not properly registered as any kind of nonprofit. There's no determination letter, there's no EIN, no filings with the IRS at all, no 990s. Do people need a muffler? I'm telling you, this is the car repair neighborhood. But I believe, and I could be wrong, she hasn't answered to this at all, but I believe she's still engaged in criminal activity, nonprofit fraud. Do people need a television? There's a lot of good stuff in this neighborhood. So anyway, we'll see. I think that Nina is trying to jam me up in court with lies and get me shut down with fraudulent restraining orders, with the assistance of George's psychopath brother, who's communicating directly with her attorneys and seems to be providing them with evidence that they're bringing into court within hours. She's able to obtain screen captures of videos that I make within an hour of them being made, but she doesn't see a video of me in Florida before several attempts at defective service by her attorneys, which in my view seem clearly designed to prevent me from being properly served and from learning about the existence of a hearing so that they can have an uncontested hearing, and they're attempting to gain an advantage in the litigation. That's what I think is happening. I could be totally wrong. But I think she's doing it because she's a criminal. And Unlike Sean Hannity, who just says she's a crazy person singing show tunes and asking, who do I have to fuck to get a job in the government? Is she a prostitute? Who would say that? She said that. I heard a video where she said that. Ridiculous. But Sean Hannity makes vague statements. Jesse Waters makes vague statements about her being a crazy person. I've drilled in to serious allegations and self-authenticating public domain evidence that would implicate her in crimes that could put her in jail, including felonies like perjury and violation of FARA. I haven't proven those things in court. I'm just talking about the evidence that I've seen that causes me to believe that. We'll see what's decided in court. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please become a sponsor of the show. I can't continue this show without your support and sponsorship. Please go to subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. Sponsor the show. You're going to get access to a huge library of sponsor-exclusive content. You can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. You can also sponsor the show by following me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribing on X. Thanks to everybody who is sponsoring the show, and let's see what happens in the coming week or two. I don't know how long some of this stuff is going to take, but we will see. Thanks for watching, everybody.